Urgent things instantly demand our attention. But often when we think about our family, we don't think urgent. We don't think this is like do or die. And so I value my family to that degree. I value the fact that I will spend time with my kids. I will have will make memories for them. I will have times where I unplug with my wife, and I will give the church my guts when I'm plugged in. But I also will take time to be with my family in a sense of urgency.
Welcome back to the All Access Podcast. We are excited for today's episode, but first we want to let you know that today we are sponsored by Iron Horse Financial. You can address all of your financial needs with a custom plan at ironhorse-financial.com. Also, we would love to connect with you on social media. You can follow us at Bethany All Access on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Let's kick back and get ready for an awesome episode.
Hey, welcome back to the All Access Podcast. My name is Wayne Brown, and I'm so glad that you joined us. Hey, I'm pumped about our topic today, and I'm pumped about our guest. Today, we have with us our senior pastor, our leader, Pastor Jonathan Stockstill is with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, indeed. I'm glad to be on the All Access Podcast.
Yes, it's going to be great. For those of you who are watching today, Pastor Jonathan has a beard. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's just an experiment. You know, it started out as a filter, and then no, I'm just playing. But I went to Africa, and my razor stopped working in Africa, and so it just started to grow. And so when I got back home, I was like, "Hey, I've never grown a beard before." And I hit this point of critical mass where Angie looked at me one day and she was like, I don't know. And so I took a poll on Instagram, and 70% of people thought I should keep it.
Keep it.
So that convinced her that it was okay.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't think I'm a faithful beard guy. I'm just having fun.
Nice. I like it. It's great. Well, I'm excited about our topic because we're going to be talking about family summer and what summer looks like. And for many people, summer is a time when pace kind of slows down and kind of go into vacation mode. For the church, it typically ramps up, especially around here. We have
it always ramps up. Every
season
ramps up.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So if it's spring, summer, fall, whatever it is,
always ramping up.
It's always ramping up. And so for the summer around here, it's ramping up, and we start doing missions trips, and there's camps, and there's conferences, all sorts of things happening. This year there was the tour to Africa, and so there's just things happening all over the place. And so, but in the midst of that, as the lead pastor, there has to be a balance between how things are ramping up in the church, but then also finding time to spend time with your family and how important that is to you and to the longevity of even the church and to ministry. And so for you, how do you balance that where things are ramping up and you're involved in a lot of it, but then trying to slow down as well?
Yeah, it's a great topic, and I'm glad we get to talk about it because I think pastors have got to really wrestle with their loyalties and their priorities. You know, most pastors, I would say 95% of pastors would say their family, specifically their marriage, is more important than the ministry. But sadly, I don't think that they actually live that out. And so I have strived to not just say it, but to actually live it out. And so I think if we were to talk about what is urgent, right? Urgent is if you start having a medical condition right now that's life-threatening, everything else kind of gets shelved, and nobody really cares about what else you were doing. We're taking you to the hospital because all of a sudden this became urgent. And it's very easy to see what's priorities when something urgent happens, and your life would be priority over your work. And so urgent things instantly demand our attention. But often when we think about our family, we don't think urgent. We don't think this is like do or die.
Right.
And so I value my family to that degree. I value the fact that I will spend time with my kids. I will have will make memories for them. I will have times where I unplug with my wife, and
Mm-hmm.
I will give the church my guts when I'm plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
But I also will take time to be with my family in a sense of urgency,
Mm-hmm.
not just I think I can, or I may have some time. It's like I will prioritize it, and so I kind of look at summer as being the best time to do that because you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Families take off. I'm talking about our church families. They take
Sure.
off. They're going to Astroworld. They're going to Disney World, wherever they
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And so most churches see a slump in attendance
Right.
during the summertime. And so it's a convenient time to pull away from the church, but also kids are out of school.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do look at the summertime as a chance to recharge,
Mm-hmm.
reconnect with my family. They've been doing all kind of school programs, extracurriculars, doing all
Yep.
that stuff, and so we focus hard as a family. And so I think to answer your question, because I know we're going to ask other questions around it, but just that sense of urgency. This is do or die. This is
Mm.
like you got to prioritize it. And I think most guys wonder, will my church give me permission to do this? Can I?
Right.
Will I get a pass to do this? And I would rather be fired
Mm-hmm.
and then miss out on the stuff that I'm doing.
Yes.
So yeah, that's
No, no,
drastic, but
no. That's great. That's fantastic. What are the benefits of when you get a chance to step away? What are the personal and spiritual benefits that you feel when you come back?
yeah. So several things happen when I'm away. Number one, I start seeing the world very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I start seeing my life. I start seeing the ministry from
Mm-hmm.
a 30,000 foot deal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm just
Mm-hmm.
in the trenches, a lot of times, even though I think I'm thinking big,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really too close to it. And when I
Mm-hmm.
back away and I have a little time away, I
Yeah.
start seeing my life. I start seeing the ministry and that sense of clarity. I also have a sense of withdrawal sometimes,
Mm.
which like I want to be back in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
but that's good for me.
Mm.
And I've learned to embrace that feeling because it shows me that I'm not irreplaceable and that the ministry will continue going on without me. It's similar to the Sabbath. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why the Sabbath is so important is it reminds us that the world revolves without us.
Yep.
And while we do nothing, the world keeps going.
Yep.
And for me, taking time with my family and being away on vacation and
Mm-hmm.
having even up to like a sabbatical of sense, it shows us and it teaches us that the ministry runs without us. And that's such a healthy perspective. So it gives me that higher vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for me to realize that the world operates without me. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
healthy, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pastors need to do that. And of course, I come back totally recharged,
Yeah.
having slept 8, 9 hours a night every
Mm-hmm.
night, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to just like you said, ramp up. I'm ready
Yeah.
to ramp
Yeah.
up for the next season.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We feel it.
Yeah.
We sense it, but it's a good thing
Yeah.
because as the leader, it's important that the leader is recharged, revived, and is ready to take the lead and not apathetic. And we absolutely love when you come back because we know that hey, there's fresh vision, there's fresh clarity, and and we absolutely love it. It's like okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? What's happening?
No, it absolutely serves the church so well
Yes,
to have a senior pastor that's refreshed and rested
yes,
because and there are churches that I know that they want their pastor in the pulpit 52 weeks of the year. If he's not there, where
right,
is he? What is
right,
he doing? And to me, it's cruel.
right.
It's so because you expect fresh rhema, fresh manna, fresh leadership, fresh
Mm,
vision out of a person who is totally depleted.
mm-hmm,
And when you have the grace to allow a pastor to recharge, refresh, you actually are serving the church so much better
mm-hmm.
because they come back seeing clear.
That's great. That's really good. And how do you see this as for long term stability and longevity in ministry? How important this time away is?
Because it comes, yeah, it's a great point. It's rhythms, and life is sustainable with rhythms.
Mm,
And maybe this is a good illustration. I've always been way more about what's sustainable for the long term than what is fast. And, you know, some people will go into workout binges. I'm sorry.
mm,
Guys will just start binging and try to get huge, and maybe it's to look good in a swimsuit or something. But then after the season, they don't have any discipline. I've always been of the persuasion that you should do what you can see yourself doing in 5 decades. And that to me is something that is sustainable. And I look at vacations and sabbaticals and things like that as something that is sustainable and something that you can do. So for me, everything's about rhythms. It's about how can I pace my life this year that I can duplicate next year and the year after and the year after, to where when I look up and I'm 65, I'll feel just as fresh as when I started. And I can tell you, I've been a senior pastor for 13 years, and I don't feel any more depleted than when I started 13 years ago. And that a lot of guys can't say that, because
Right.
they get to this stage, and you get this, the volume of decisions, the volume of responsibility. It's really large. But if you have a good rhythm of rest and reprieve, then it's a sustainable thing. You can keep doing this for a long time. So
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. Will you tell us a little bit of strategy? Last year, you did something that was a little bit different. I know some pastors take just vacation or sabbatical for a month or so, or however long it is, 2 weeks, whatever. Last year, you did something a little bit different, which was you did a missions trip that kind of connected to the back end of kind of that sabbatical vacation, took your family on the missions trip, and then went on that time. Can you explain a little bit like
yeah,
what that was all about, maybe the motivation
it
behind that?
actually began 4 years ago. And the thought was, my kids are old enough now to have these experiences on the mission field. And I had them as growing up. I had experiences, and it's so amazing for kids to have a global perspective and to be exposed to different cultures and cultures that don't have as much as we have in America, and different types of ministry. So it became a passion point for me to expose my kids to the mission field.
That's awesome.
At the same time, Bethany really had a revival, in a sense, of missions trips. We've always been a missional church,
Right.
but we really wanted to see our people engage in missions like never before. And so I started to make it a point to take our kids on a missions trip every year. And Bethany sends out, I believe this year it's going to be close to 20 trips that we send out around the world. But I wanted our kids to be a part of that and to experience that. So, several years ago, we took a trip to Africa, and we did a trip to Uganda, and we did a trip to Kenya. I really love East Africa a lot. It's an amazing place. But we were there in Uganda for 2 weeks, and then we went to Kenya for 2 weeks and did a lot of serving. And we met a trip from Bethany there, and actually made that our entire vacation. And I will say I was just as revived and refreshed doing that as going to a lake house and sitting there by a lake.
Sure.
Something about it is just changing your environment, being with your family. And so we did almost a full month of missions with our family.
Yeah.
And then the year after that, we went to Puerto Rico. And we spent 3 weeks in Puerto Rico. We had several trips going back to back. And so we were there. And some days we would go to the beach, but some days we'd go out on an outreach. And it was almost combining those two worlds, where the kids were getting exposed to kingdom work around the world, but also having a bit of vacation. And then this year, I did both. I took our kids, or two of our kids, to Africa with me. And we did a worship trip there with our worship team. But then I flew back and met my wife and the other two kids, and we had 2 weeks of just family vacation.
Yeah.
And we kicked it. We went and saw Mount Rushmore. We went all the way up to the Northwest and took a road trip. And so what you see there is a value for missions, exposing them to missions around the world, but then also a value to get away with them. So it's almost like a mashup of that.
Love it.
And so I do think it's incredible for kids to have exposure to global missions. Tell you something else that we're doing is where not just pastors, but I think families should do this. So many churches have great student conferences. And you want your kids in these environments where they have a moment with God and God speaks to them. All of our lives are marked with these journeys or these encounters where God meets. I could bring you to the spots where I heard the Lord speak this to me, and then at this point he spoke this to me, and it's just different encounters with God. And I want my kids in the room. I'll give you an example. We were in Africa, and we were in the country of Uganda leading worship. And I look down on the front row, and I have my son there who's 9 years old, and I see him crying. He's just weeping on the front row. He wept for 15 minutes. It was amazing. I had a hard time on stage. I actually got emotional watching him. I didn't know
Sure.
what was going on. Afterwards, I asked him, I said, Beck, what happened there? And he said, I felt like God spoke to me. And I said, what did he say? And he said that he wants me to be closer to him. And I mean, he was just moved. It was the Holy Spirit moved on him and marked him. He'll never forget it. And then one of the team members had like a prophetic word for him and shared that with him. And they both start crying as he shares this word. Had I missed that moment of putting him in that environment, he would not have the story. So yeah, you can put your kid on a water slide. That's great. But man, put them in a place where they meet God. The same thing happened with my daughters. They were they went to Motion. Church of the Highlands puts a huge student conference on. I love that conference. And they were there. They had a moment with God. My kids actually went to 3 student conferences this summer. And I'm just trying to get them in those environments. And, they're 14 years old, 15 years old. And most parents think that stuff is not important. And they would much rather just take them somewhere fun.
Sure.
But man, these are life-altering encounters that they have with God that you don't want them to miss.
No, that's awesome. We were talking in one of the previous podcasts about biblical worldviews and having that biblical worldview, and it's taking those type of things, like you said, and putting them in those type of environments that helps a student, a young person, to be able to see the world different because they're having those kind of moments and encounters with God. And I think that's really, really, really great. What are some strategies you put in place? Because we talked a little bit earlier about how there's that guilt to want to leave, like I can't leave. But in order to do it, you have to put some strategies in place
Absolutely.
in your absence. What are some things that you do to ensure that things are going to be taken care of?
To me, one of the foremost responsibilities of a pastor is vision. Vision is the ability to see, the ability to see what's coming. And I think that most of that ability to see is based in a calendar because it's actually what's coming. The captain of the ship is looking way out ahead. And so for me, it's making sure that the time that you're away is a great experience for the people. And part of that, a lot of that is the pulpit. Who is speaking in the pulpit? How strong will it be? I think it is the responsibility of the pastor to make sure that what's being communicated from the pulpit is powerful.
Yeah.
And especially if you're taking 5 weeks out of the pulpit and people won't hear from you for 5 weeks, it better be strong. And so I think that foresight and planning and making sure all of the weeks that you will be out will be strong. And I can just say at Bethany, it's so strong that I don't know that people look forward to me being back. I mean, they're like, hey, he's back. But it's so good that people actually thank me because the quality of what's being communicated is so good. And so I think a lot of that is making sure that those Sundays are really strong. But also that the church has a lot of clarity on vision to where they're not sitting around wondering, what are we doing? What are we spending our time doing? And so each person has their marching orders, and there's a lot of clear vision. And you use the word ramp up. The fall is actually the true ramp up because
Right.
it's, people are getting back into school, getting back into rhythms, and that's where churches see a huge influx of attendance. And so the senior pastor has to make sure that the church is swinging into full momentum by the time the summer comes to a close. And a lot of those weeks will be without him. So it's determining beforehand, does everybody have clear marching orders? And then also making sure that there's clear command chains going all the way down to where if this happens, who is called? And so some of those things are
No,
super important.
that's really, really great. That's super important, and you've always done a great job of just making sure there's very clear marching orders while you're away, and that way there's not really even a question of what needs to happen or where things are going because it's already there, it's already planned out, and that brings peace to the team. And I'm sure it gives you peace while you're away, not having to worry are things moving forward. It definitely brings a lot of peace. I guess one of the last questions I would have is that we were talking about rhythms, and really that's kind of what this whole thing is all about, is rhythms in life and what that looks like long term. And what are some practical tips? This is kind of a big question, big can, but what are some practical tips that you would give a pastor for managing their workload overall, and just making sure they take time off effectively, and just making sure they don't get overwhelmed, because obviously it's a huge task and to lead. And just what are some things that you would say
Mm.
overall to manage the workload?
So I don't think I do everything well, or I don't do a lot of things well. One thing I do well is manage what you're talking about. And I think the key to it, number one, is I'm not obsessed with being in control of everything. I
Mm-hmm.
truly empower people to lead,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I expect them to lead. And I know what I can do, and I also know what I can't do, and I'm very true to that. And some guys that burn out, they literally feel like they have to do everything, and then they would even complain about it. I've got to be at everything. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't properly empowered somebody to lead, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
trust people. They don't trust anybody, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to believe in people, trust people. You're going to make some mistakes. I've had people let me down,
Mm-hmm.
but for the majority, there is a lot of gifted people
Mm-hmm.
in the kingdom, and you have to do well at training them and empowering them, and that's a huge part of it. Another part of it is, like I said before, really determining what's urgent. What is urgent?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my wife is urgent. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I look at her, and my relationship with her is urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And next to God,
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that matters the most to me. And I don't just say that, like, I live that. And then
Mm-hmm.
my kids are absolutely urgent. And
Mm-hmm.
so you would say, "Oh, something urgent happened in the church."
Mm-hmm.
No, well, I can promise you, whatever that urgent thing is not more urgent than my kids.
Wow.
And so when I'm looking at what's red, what's flashing red,
Yeah.
it's my kids at all times. And I'm never looking at them, oh, it's green. It doesn't matter. No, it's always red. I
Mm-hmm.
always look at them as like, this is urgent. And so when it's not just words that you say, but it's actually a philosophy that you embrace,
Mm-hmm.
then you begin to realize, like, okay, if that really is true, and God is my foremost attention, and then my wife, and then my kids, okay, then I have my work, and I have and I will give to the church what I have left to give.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do give it, it will be full. I will give my full heart. Like, I'm not going to half prepare a sermon. I'm not going to do a team meeting. I'm not going to half do budget meetings. I'm not going to half do. So I'm going to give it everything. But I do have those boundaries, and so I think being able to draw those boundaries and do the best you can, but not kill yourself.
Yeah.
Just do the best you can. And so there's lots of things that I wish we could do, but I do understand it's outside of my ability to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm content knowing that I've given the best I can within the framework of what I have.
That's great. That's great. Pastor John, obviously we're going to have you back on again, because there's so many things that you just said that we could have dove down some different lanes. I have so many other questions going through my mind, and I think that would help pastors. And so obviously we're going to have you back on again to talk about some of those things. You were talking about trust and empowering people. You were talking about doing the best you have. And I just was thinking about how, as pastors, sometimes we can get to look into what other people are doing and trying to be competitive. And but I love that you said, look, just give the best that you have. And you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I think that's super important. I feel like that's something that we could probably even talk more
I
about.
would love to. And I'll leave with this. The question is what are your priorities? Truly, what are your priorities?
Yeah,
For me, I want to be healthy until I'm 100 years old, if God keeps me here.
yeah,
So that means I need to walk every day. I need to exercise every day. And so that to me is more important than something going on at the church. It's the ability to take care of yourself first. And this comes with priorities and everything we're talking about: vacations, sabbaticals, rhythms. It all is about your true priorities.
yeah.
And so,
Well, Pastor John, will you pray for a pastor
yeah,
maybe that's a little bit overwhelmed right now,
yeah,
and are thinking, man, this is helpful for me. Do you mind doing
absolutely.
that?
God, pray for whatever pastor is listening to this right now that needed to hear this, and maybe they've just asked themselves, how in the world could I get away, and how could I take a break, and what will my people think? And I pray that, Lord, you would give them the courage to actually prioritize life in the way it should be. And I pray that they have the courage to give what they can, but not more than what they can, and that they would feel the freedom to go away and be refreshed. And Lord, give them the clarity of vision to know how to do that. And I just pray for them. I pray that they wouldn't burn out, but you'd give them the vision to see what they need to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Jonathan.
All right.
Hey, thank you again for watching and listening to the All Access Podcast. Hey, just as a reminder, we have mission trips that are coming up, all access mission trips that are happening in 2025. We're going to Cuba, we're going to Brazil, and you can go to BethanyAllAccess.com to sign up and find out more information about that. Hey, like, share, subscribe. Let somebody know what's going on here. And until next time, we love you, and we'll see you again.